Hi, this is a quick introduction to the IVD hardware development roadmap from Zimmer and Peacock. So by this I mean the hardware for doing in vitro diagnostics. Zimmer and Peacock has a similar hardware roadmap for wearable biosensors and for continuous glucose monitoring, but here we're just focusing specifically on the IVD hardware roadmap. So let me essentially jump straight into it. So ZP has a platform called the ZP Accelerator. We have much more material on our websites and in video format about this. I will be very quick on this, but what the ZP Accelerator assumes is that ZP is very quickly able to develop you at least a proof of principle sensor for your assay of interest, either using one of our off-the-shelf formulations for glucose, pH, ketones, lactates, etc., cortisol. We have many of these formulations, or it's maybe something specific like a immunoassay or a molecular assay, something that we've developed for you. But the idea is we've developed for you, we've put it onto one of our sensor platforms, and we're really into the acceleration of your development, which means we've got the sensor, we've got a standard piece of hardware from Zimmer Peacock, which is really a fully functional instrument. What I mean by that is this instrument can do many of the electrochemical techniques that we like to use. It could be impedance spectroscopy, amperometry, square wave voltammetry, differential pulse voltammetry, multi-pulse amperometry. These things, none of these things are really a problem for us. So on the Accelerator platform, we expect there's a sensor, we expect that there's hardware, and we also expect that we may have developed you an app. This app could be smartphone based or PC based. Personal preference, it's smartphone based because then we can make Bluetooth connectivity between the hardware. We can therefore tell the hardware what to do. The hardware gives the the raw data back to the app, and then the app, because it's a smart device, it should have connectivity, and that means we can send the data to the Julie cloud. Now, I'm not going to go into any more detail on the Accelerator platform, but ZP does have a lot of information in the public domain about this. So we assume that we've somehow got you, we've got you onto our Accelerator platform, and some sort of proof of principle has been proven, and this system looks like it's going to work. So there's really a next stage now, which is how are we going to get you from our Accelerator platform to, when I say at the end of this, CE marked, it could be 510K, for example, if it's to the US, but we want to go from our Accelerator platform to something that's much more your product. And so at ZP, we have essentially several stages for this. First of all, I'll talk about handheld devices, but I also want to say that we can also have the same conversation when it comes to desktop instruments as well. So stage one is a minimally viable product, an MVP. On that MVP, the device itself might have data processing, analog front end, and that analog front end will be the same analog front end that we use in our lab, the same analog front end that we use in the Accelerator platform that I described above. This device would also have data storage, and I've just added here it can have, or should really have Bluetooth as well. Now, the thing about the ZP MVP stage one is, we're doing this specifically for you, but we're really calling upon our manual, or let's say our catalog of standard pieces. So we'll have standard mechanical pieces that we've experienced with, standard electronic pieces that we're experienced with, also our sort of standard systems engineering, that we know what electronic pieces work with which mechanical pieces, which Peltiers to use, which pumps to use. The analog front end never changes, so we have a systems level understanding, but also, very importantly, we're also pulling from a code base that we've used before. So I'm describing the stages to go when you go with Zimmer Peacock, how to get you to your hardware, and I'm sort of ignoring the sensor part at the moment, but the sensor part is important. It's something that ZP's very experienced with and probably has a unique skill set in. But first of all, we would probably put your assay through our Accelerator platform. Once that looks good, we then need to get you to an MVP, and MVP will kind of help release levels of funding. Next, really, it's starting to come away from some of our standard pieces and are starting to become more customized. So you might have multi-sensor requirements. You may have heating and cooling of the sensor that we need to think about. There may be pumps and valves. But again, we will be calling upon the same catalog of standard mechanical pieces, electronic pieces, systems engineering pieces, and code pieces that we already have. And now stage three really is, what you're going to go to market with. So it's I say here CE marking, which is relevant in Europe, but FDA submission type stuff if we're talking about the USA. And here we're starting to talk about EMC options, how to stop electromagnetic radiation affecting other pieces or the piece itself being affected. We have to start thinking about safety options, over current, over voltage, under voltage. We have to start thinking about watchdog triggers. When does the assay start? Is it when the sensor is filled? Does the assay start when a temperature is reached? So there's all these details that are very specific to your assay. So what we're saying here is that at Zimmer & Peacock, we are experienced on going from our Accelerator through these MVPs, the beginning of adaptation to what you actually require, and then the actual CE marking or something that's actually for submission to a regulatory authority. And it's not just we just don't do this at handhelds, we also do this with desktops as well. But even in the MVP level, we might have several sort of levels of instruments. We could have a very simple instrument with sort of microcontroller. We could have a second level of instrument where maybe the algorithms are more advanced. And it's probably worth saying that sometimes when you're doing an MVP, you can have, if you do a small amount of science, then your algorithm could be quite simplistic. The more testing you do, the more sophisticated some of these things can get. So there could be, more than just one level of MVP. There could be MVP, let's say 1.0 and MVP 1.1. And there can be an MVP, for example, 1.3. This is a personal comment, but I'm really, whatever we do at ZP, I do like to build in connectivity to it. And by connectivity, Bluetooth connectivity or even Wi-Fi connectivity, I think is really important. Even if you don't use it in the first release of the product, having it in there and having connectivity and cloud in your business plan is probably essential. So, we do an MVP, but even within the MVP, there can be a 1.1, a 1.2, and a 1.3. If you have a clear idea of what you need, we can start going straight to 1.3, for example. And as I say, the MVP might have data processing, an analog front end, data storage. Again, there's the customization then, and the customization can also have a 1.1, a 1.2, and a 1.3 in it. Again, the more we engage with you, then the sort of clearer what the final product will be. I think you're at least going to be in a situation where you do have an MVP. You should be using that MVP, as you already know, with the end users and gathering that kind of feedback. So as described before, the customization might start including specific heating regimes. If it's an isothermal molecular assay, then it might need to go to 60 odd degrees rapidly, etc. And then again, there's that stage 3, and even with a stage 3, we could have a simple, let's say, stage 3 CE mark product, but there are potential levels of sophistication even within that. So what I want to do now is say that even though I think electrochemistry and Zimmer Peacock, we're particularly good at making point of care, point of need, in-field handheld devices. Electrochemistry also lends itself very well to desktop instruments, and so the MVP that you're looking for might not be handheld, and if it's a desktop type instrument with a touchscreen, we're completely happy to also be involved in that. So we can use again the same sort of mindset that we have a number of standard parts, standard touchscreens, standard analog front end, standard processors, standard Bluetooth modules, standard Wi-Fi modules, etc. So we're not searching around for the parts. We know what to use and we know what works together. And then again, there's the CE marking desktop instrument as well, where really we're getting into making sure that the final instrument doesn't leak or isn't affected by external radiation would be an obvious one. That the safety features are in place. If you need to lose liquids, the pumps, etc. are in place. So if I was to summarize this, at Zimmer and Peacock, we would start people essentially on potentially on our Accelerator, but then very quickly then there's a sort of a decision point. Are you going for a handheld device, or are you going for, as I show here, a desktop? And whether it's really handheld or desktop, they both fit very well within the wheelhouse of Zimmer and Peacock. So as I say, this has really been about the hardware for doing in vitro diagnostic type assays, and we would have similar material regarding continuous glucose monitoring or wearable biosensors, etc. So if you've got any questions about Zimmer and Peacock and about our roadmap and our understanding of how to go from idea to Accelerator to CE marking on a handheld device or a desktop device, please don't hesitate to contact us at ZP. Okay, thanks very much.